Hi there. This is the first in a series of videos breaking down what happened behind the scenes, so I'm going to keep this focused for now. House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 8, which was aired as the season finale, was not intended to be the finale. It was literally Episode 8 out of 10. By which I mean it was written as script 8 out of 10 scripts, which were all submitted before filming began, that were submitted January of 2023. Very much at the last minute, possibly as late as the start of filming itself, but well past the point of no return, when it was offensively, absurdly late to tell them to do this. Around March of 2023, Warner Discovery cut the series budget and reduced the episode count from 10 to 8. This is actually a widespread thing they're doing on all of their shows. We just happen to be the first one of the year. You will see the knock-on effects of this going into The Last of Us Season 2, into other projects they're doing. They reduced episode counts across the board. This alone would have been a major problem, reducing the episode count from 10 to 8. But on top of this, it was just before the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike, which this show operates under. I keep having to explain to random people in the comments, they film in Europe, but the writers are registered with the WGA, and the news channels were following Ryan Condal and his staff, openly talking about in news interviews how we're handling working during the strike, because we're WGA members. Yes, that this affected them. So the writers knew the strike was coming. The studio knew the strike was coming and would last for months, ultimately 6 months. So it's not just, just as filming begins or a month before filming begins, hey, you have to reduce your episode count from 10 to 8. It took 8 months to write, and there are no standalone episodes, so we'd have to rewrite the whole thing. It would take much longer than this. And on top of that, we can't even, flying by the seat of our pants, desperately do live rewrites during the next 2 months of filming, because it's a long filming cycle, that they could plausibly go, well, with 6 months, we might be able to think up new scenes as we're doing it. They wouldn't have been that good anyway, because they'd have to trim things. It would have been a chaos. But they could have, people saying, why didn't they reduce it from 10 to 8? Why didn't they, when they did that, why didn't the writers, it's their job to restructure this as an 8-episode season. The entire crux of the issue is that Warner Discovery gave them an impossible order too late to fix anything. When they're starting to film right before a writer's strike, when it's pencils down so they can't even do rewrites. It was physically impossible. Faced with an impossible situation, Condal really had zero choice. All they could do was film the first 8 scripts, then literally lop off episodes 9 and 10. I'd like to say that, Condal bravely took a stand. It wasn't even that. There was no choice. They would have had like an outline, not real scripts, if they had desperately tried to hand in something with a month to go before a writer's strike. And the weird thing is, I keep trying to explain this in comment sections or social media the past few days. People don't listen. That there was no time to rewrite this. That is the entire point. Some people even doubting that, the WGA strike wouldn't affect this. They film in England. I keep saying no. That there's so many fake rumors going around, so little fact. Were you looking at public news sites the past 2 years when we were all worried about how the strike would affect everything? I've even seen people blaming staffing things, like that Miguel Sapochnik didn't come back for Season 2, and that would not affect something on a season scale in terms of once in 15 years writer's strike, no live rewrites. Lopping off the last 2 episodes due to budget has nothing to do with Sapochnik, so people just grappling with their own biases, or, this is Sarah Hess's fault. Sarah Hess doesn't control that they got lost 2 episodes due to budget. The writers themselves really had no choice whatsoever affecting that. So it's this double crisis, a double war, if you will. That's a tough voyaging reference. To how that they got a shortened episode count just as a writer's strike began. In retrospect, this is exactly what we feared in spring of 2023, but it seemed so ridiculous as to be impossible, and I apologize for that. That I was the one championing Oh no, they must have, because the season 1 was a mega hit. They just won a Golden Globe. The ratings are great. They resurrected the franchise. Think of where we were in March of 2023, two months out from the Golden Globes. I thought, well, they must have taken a 10-episode season, expanded it to 16 episodes, then chopped it in half to air in 2 blocks. Particularly because they also, at the time, thinking on it, said that season 3 might come quicker because this is before they thought there'd be the studio was in denial there would be a strike. That, oh, well, it'll come quicker because of that was fantasy. That in retrospect, this is the reason behind everything, that we have been living with that lie for a year and a half. Have that cloud lift from your mind. Put yourself back where we were March of 2023, our fears, our looks to the future. I also kept saying that, oh, well, the filming was supposed to start in March of 23. It started in April. And I said, well, the month delays because they're spending time figuring out the next phases, and they want to make Dunk and Egg, they want to make a cinematic universe. No, they apparently gave the writers a pittance of 1 extra month. It was delayed because they were frantically trying to do rewrites before the strike hit in April, as best they could. And there still wasn't time. It took 8 months to write. So, thankfully, not just me, but other channels, like even things like winteriscoming.net and Screen Rant ran a decent article. I'm sharing all this on my community tab, accurately assessing this was due to the strike and due to the parent company cutting their episode count right before a strike. This is absurd. There was nothing they could do. Was season 2 bad? No. Was it bad? Or were there problems because of lopping off the final 2 episodes? Yes and no. Because based on following the filming reports, I never expected there to be a battle at the end of it. Like, we knew, despite the clickbaiters saying the Battle of the Gullet's going to be in it, this big naval battle, I thought the action climax was the sowing of the dragon seeds, the red sowing. And then, like, episode 8 would be just what they usually do, where they go, oh, it's on the 9s, where the second to last is the big action thing. I thought that would just be them consolidating. This structure in itself doesn't frighten me. And let me be clear, even if Warner had given them as much money as they needed to make a 10-episode season, there would have been pacing issues during season 2, specifically due to the lack of rewrites because of the strike. It was just bad timing. That isn't HBO's or Warner Discovery's fault, even, that we legally can't do rewrites on some of these. Maybe you could argue they should have given them more time to do reshoots, and I will make a separate video about that, but long story short, Ryan Condal in his Props podcast mentioned we did some rewrites, but we had to prioritize the important episodes. That's why episodes 1, 2, 4, 7 feel like season 1 episodes. They're really good. Those are the big battle ones, the big important ones. That's the difference between rewrites and we don't have time to do rewrites. I think they should have, there wouldn't have been time to film that many more things. Maybe they should have pushed it to fall. I would have if I was in charge of, if you had trimmed or rewritten maybe 2 or 3 scenes, which, no, things that happen on interior sets, could have drastically fixed this season. Like, the only thing I'd really cut is I liked Daemon's plot in Harrenhal. The one thing I'd cut is his scenes in episode 5, because they were redundant with the other ones. Everything else, his scenes in 3, 4, 6, 7, all the other Alice River stuff, is just, it was repetitive in just episode 5. And I would have added, like, a better scene with Helena based on other things the actors said that they wanted to do with her arc. Like, I would have taken one scene out, put another one in. That. It's 3 things. That's point 1. Point 2, what I already said, that when the whole thing that Emma Darcy ad-libbed that Rhaenyra would start kissing Mysaria, well, you either need to not do that or write in more scenes to set that up. But it felt jarringly sudden because it was an ad-lib, that rewrites, if they were going to do that, rewrites would have smoothed it in more or not. So that decision would have been made had the writers been able to do this. I'm not the only channel saying this. And the 2 Alicent Rhaenyra meeting scenes weren't that good, and structurally I think it would be hard to take them out because they did further the plot. In terms of Rhaenyra's going, okay, now I'm ready for war. It's just, this blatantly needed a heavy rewrite. Just in terms of the dialogue, like specifically the episode 3 one. The episode 8 one, it was, I think I've seen most reviewers say, was better written. It was just annoying by that point because the sour taste in our mouths by the one in episode 3 that on paper this was not even a bad idea. It's just I can see how rewrites wouldn't have necessarily made it great. But even if you're a critic of that, please, okay, you're going to say in the comments anyway, my argument is it would have at least been better. And I blame the lack of rewrites due to the writer's strike. The key point is, oh, are we going to give up on the show or not? This problem will never happen again, because Season 3 will not be written during a writer's strike, will not be filmed during a writer's strike. Ryan Condal and his staff will be able to do live rewrites again. So it'll be as good as the ones they were able to prioritize their limited rewrites for, like Episode 2, Episode 7, were better because they could do rewrites. So I'm a little annoyed, but it's behind us. It's in the rearview mirror. We don't have to worry about, writer's strikes have destroyed other shows. Breaking Bad Season 1 was truncated because of a writer's strike and was still pretty good. This is not what worries me. The pacing issues, that'll be fixed. It's the ongoing disaster setup from the domino effect, the knock-on effect of overstuffing the later seasons with reduced episode count. Granted, they will be able to plan it out better in advance, because they have advance warning. Last time they didn't. But they will have to cut a lot of things if they still have 8-episode seasons. That right after the finale, Ryan Condal said, we're going to have 2 more seasons. In and of itself, that isn't bad. We already thought they're going to end this show with Season 4, and then the Aftermath era, which is like a direct sequel, that there's still chapters from Fire and Blood after that, which go on for like another 6 years. You could get like a 3 to 4, maybe 5-season show, depending on whether Fire and Blood 2 comes out. The Aftermath era chapters would be a direct sequel, so I'm not really worried. But the story of the Dance of the Dragon Civil War, yeah, that'll end with Season 4. We already knew that, and that's not a problem. I've already guessed that. It's Martin himself said you need 4 seasons of 10 episodes each to tell that story. And they announced the next 2 seasons are also going to have 8 episodes. Think on what they did. They literally cut off episodes 9 and 10 from the planned 10-episode Season 2, and are forcing the writers to shove them into the planned or aspiring to be 10-episode Season 3. So they had a planned 10 episodes for Season 3, more of an outline, I guess, at this point, which they have reduced to 8, and on top of that, they had to remove another 2 episodes to fit in the 2 final episodes from Season 2. So now, Season 3 is basically going to try to tell a 10-episode story in 6 episodes. And Season 4, presumably another 10-episode story in 8 episodes. And with advanced planning, with rewrites, without a strike, with skilled writers like this, they might manage to do it. They might even make it a pretty good action thing that if you're, I don't know, if you're watching this cold and haven't read the books, you wouldn't know who Nettles is. You wouldn't know that Kragan Stark actually has a very interesting backstory, but we need to be pushing in every media outlet what a stupid idea it is to cut this from 10-episode seasons to 8-episode seasons. I've shared articles about this on my community tab. That we can't just sit back and accept, yup, 8 episodes, I guess we can't do anything. What happened to the fans who complain and make fan campaigns and everything that just, well, would they listen? Well, the point is we need to really emphasize and inform, because at this point there's fake rumors going around of, oh, these are writer decisions. There was a writer's strike and they reduced the episode count and it was bad for the show. Structured news analysis videos which hopefully bubble up to the level of building arguments that, like, again, Screen Rant, which I disparage normally, had a pretty good article on this based on just the information that fans were floating around social media that we were floating around at the time. So we need to get the things like Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, others to be posting op-eds going, Warner Discovery from a business standpoint is hurting itself with these reduced seasons. And like I said, this will keep coming up again throughout the coming year. That it's that ripple effect of they reduced the episode count a year and a half ago. Now all of the shows they reduced like that are finally going to be airing. So how will this affect The Last of Us Season 2? I don't know. And some of their other projects. So hopefully the criticism of, oh, this is just a House of the Dragon problem will fade as with every new premiere, people realizing you meant to do other shows longer than this. What the heck? And it'll vary from one to the next. I don't know if, like, when did they film The Penguin? When did they film the Dune thing? That it wasn't right before the strike. I don't know those as well. But rather than going silent, I know other channels watch my thing. We need other channels in the community just make a standalone video saying how much 8-episode seasons hurt this show. Season 3 needs 10 episodes. I'm going to make more videos about this standalone to give it more focus. This is literally the difference between Nettles and Kragan Stark showing up in Season 3 or not. That based on deleted scenes that went so far as to actually film, it seems like Ryan Condal is actually hedging his bets and left the door open to include Nettles and Kragan Stark. They even filmed things with Kragan in episode 8, which were cut. That he's holding out that if they get a 10-episode season, he might try to put back into Season 3. Now, I'm not trying to sell you on false hope. I'm just saying it is now 100% clear to me that Ryan Condal wants to put those characters back in that were cut from Season 2. However, it's an uphill battle against the studio slashing episode counts. And we need to give them as much support as possible, raise as much of a stink as possible, just campaigning of, why are you cutting the most successful part of your company? That I just made a video last week, immediate post-finale of what, by the numbers, House of the Dragon had solid ratings. It was even bigger internationally. And Max doubled its revenue in the past year, literally 100% increase. That this is your biggest cash cow, and you should be taking the money away from other things to keep this at 10 episodes. It's not just, I know it's, I want 10 episodes to tell it well, but from a business standpoint, it is stupid to slash episode counts like this. And while there won't be a strike again, the knock-on effect of that, it's not just that you told them to reduce it, it's you told them to reduce the count when it was too late to rewrite it. So now we have these floating 2 extra episodes about the Battle of the Gullet, which are going to really truncate Season 3. I've seen some people going, oh, we should be pushing for 12 episodes. That's unrealistic. I would like to have a supersized final season of 2 batches of 6 aired 6 months apart. That if they just push everything backward, I'm willing to wait a year for the Battle of the Gullet and other major events, so long as they actually film the damn thing. But how could you possibly fit this into only 8? So the way I'm phrasing it is, you need more than 8. Let's push for 10 and see where we go. Another issue is, up until the finale, I honestly thought that filming was going to start in the fall, and I think it was intended to. Because more than one cast member said filming will be in fall. This wasn't a rumor. Matt Smith said that in an interview. In the post-episode interviews, Ryan Condal stressed that we're filming, quote, early-ish 2025. So the problem now is we have nothing to report on this fall, so I'm going to have other things about what my channel schedule is, but I think Condal pushed back the filming date because up until when filming starts, he is behind the scenes, as I'm speaking right now, he is fighting with Warner Discovery's leadership, with Zaslav, about getting 10 episodes again. So it's a good thing that they're delayed, because that means 8 episodes isn't locked in. The way he phrased it, at first I freaked out and thought, he said it's probably 8. And then others like Elio on Westeros.org pointed out, no, he said, I haven't even discussed it yet. 8 or 10. Condal's always very diplomatic in interviews. You have to read through that he's putting a nice spin on it. I mean, he's the one who said, oh, this was a creative choice. And Sarah Hess was the one who had to be honest with us and admit this was not a creative choice. So when people read into what Condal said this, sometimes he's being diplomatic. So he didn't even firmly say definitely 8. You can tell he's arguing with Warner Discovery, but doesn't want to argue in public. And I think at the earliest we might hear more about this is first week of November. Because that's the next quarterly earnings call for Warner Discovery, where they'll see how the rest of the season did. Only the first 2 episodes were in June. The cutoff for the last quarterly thing was the end of June. And, like, the Wednesday after the Sunday night finale of season 2, like 3 days later, they had their worst earnings call ever, where Zaslav had to admit we're bleeding money, because of the writer's strike, but also the cable channels aren't earning money. I lost the NBA, all of that. And that was a blessing in disguise, I guess, because imagine if that bad earnings call hadn't happened, and this was just, this was House of the Dragon's not finale. In isolation, a lot more people would have been blaming Ryan Condal. But when 3 days later, Warner Discovery has this awful earnings report, I think that helped convince more people that it's not us, it's the studio. They're making stupid decisions. But I've already talked about this, the earnings call. The next one is the first week in November. So maybe there'll be more movement on that. Like, by the day, weird things are happening with David Zaslav. That their new sports streamer just got an injunction on it for being a monopoly. Other problems that are happening. So we'll see what happens. But it does take months to write a 10-episode season. It's possible Condal might even be writing a 10-episode season in defiance of this, with fallback plans in place, because if you plan in advance, you can go, this is the 10-episode version, this is the 8-episode version. I'm not sure. Ultimately, we won't know if Season 3 has a 10-episode season until they actually start filming in March, if they announce it. That as late as March, I will be thinking they might have contingency plans. Perhaps hoping that Zaslav isn't in charge anymore, I don't know. So, I have to admit, I don't know a lot of what's going to happen. No one does. This is stunning industry news that Zaslav was basically for the past year and a half pretending that they were profitable by saving the money he didn't spend on the last 2 episodes of this and The Last of Us. And it's all coming home to roost now. So I'm not just going to curl up into a ball and not report on it, because then I'd be leaving you guys with there's just rumor going around that. The good news is whatever happens, Season 3 will not be made during a writer's strike. Any pacing issues not all the problems, there weren't that many problems. Pacing issues in episodes 1 through 8 I attribute to the writer's strike, and I would at least give them the benefit of the doubt. Westeros.org, Elio and Linda, if you haven't seen their episode 8 review, check it out. They said they were going to do more. And these are hardcore book fans, they were giving Ryan Condal and his writing staff the benefit of the doubt. They were sympathetic. They said, we know, objectively, from following the news, that the studio screwed them over. And we don't blame the writers for that. This couldn't have been their fault. And yes, there were some pacing things, but we know why. There was a strike, they shut the episode count down. What you need to do right now is, if you are a fan channel listening to this, make a video specifically saying how the reduced episode count was Warner's fault and they need 10 episodes again. Some channels have already done this. By name, Red Team Review, Supercuts Delight, and Talking Thrones. I've linked all 3 of those on my community tab. I will link those at the end of this video in the description box below, because they made more succinct 10 to 15 minute versions of this than I did. But clearly saying this was the studio's fault, they really need 10 episodes again, they shot themselves in the foot here. Whenever we bring up the phrase, you killed the golden goose, looking over, and I'll link that video I made about how they did by the numbers, this is the most profitable part of your company. This is one of the flagship shows that is driving international expansion. They timed the Europe launch of Max to the Season 2 premiere of this show, and you're cutting episodes from it? And I take heart in the fact, if ever you feel bad, tell me in the comments this, if you feel bad to see people bashing Season 2, because while it was flawed, you liked it, and you understand it was the studio's fault, recognize that the more news sites, not people in comments, but news sites are complaining Season 2 was really truncated, the more in the public sphere that looks bad, it's building the argument for you need a 10-episode season next time to make up for this, to absorb the episodes you pushed into Season 3. So every time that something says that, I take heart in the fact that if there was ever a backlash this was a backlash. When you look at Rotten Tomatoes, gave the finale 50%, and universally every reviewer said, this is actually a good episode of television. I'm giving it a bad rating because it blatantly isn't a finale. You idiots cut off the last 2 episodes. That's the studio's fault. So if ever there was a backlash, we have a backlash on our hands. A rational person would course correct after that and give them 2 more episodes next season, but David Zaslav might not be rational. That's what keeps me up at night. But there was enough of a backlash, and enough news sites did notice that we've got the ball rolling. It's not as if we're shouting into the darkness. So I'm on 2 sides here. I'm like, don't worry, but we need help. Well, if there was no hope, you wouldn't do anything. And if there wasn't a problem, you wouldn't do anything. What I'm saying is there's just enough momentum to the criticism of this. Please spread the word that it was the studio's fault. The writers did what they could. Things I didn't even like, I have to admit, like Daemon and Harrenhal in episode 5, or Rhaenyra meeting Alicent. This was done without rewrites and course correction, so I can't fairly judge it. That it would have at least been better. And those are like 3 things. I mean, specifically Daemon episode 5. Other than that, I liked it. Other parts of the season I really liked, and I could just tell, yeah, there was a strike affecting this. So I'm going to be keeping up. I'm sorry I took a week since my last video. I've been in research mode. I've been doing a lot of research on this. Business-wise, we've been living under a blanket of lies for a year and a half of what the hell is really going on with Warner Discovery. And I'll make follow-ups about that. And to stress, we're not really sure when they told them to cut the episode count, other than that it was past the point of no return. It was at least past the midpoint of writing, which is still really bad. Could have been literally as the season started filming in March. It's somewhere between those 2 polls. I suspect it was after January, when they said, well, everything's submitted and normal by January. Maybe. It might not have been quite as dramatic as March, but still, even if you have 2 months to go before filming and it took you 8 to 10 months to write, and there's a strike coming on, you do not tell your people, cut the last 2 episodes, make it an 8-episode season. Like, Khan will be looking back at them going, we are past the point of no return. That you would lose more money doing that than you would save by not making those 2 episodes, on the wider knock-on effect of hurting this as a franchise. So I need you all to spread the word, and I will be making more specific, shorter and focused things on specific aspects of what happened with this. There is a lot of ground to cover. I have not made my season review or episode 8 standalone review, which I'm going to review it as an episode of, okay, this is episode 8 of 10. Accepting as a given they screwed up the finale, it was a pretty good episode. Overall. I'll break it down point by point. It was about as good as episode 1 was to me. Just, there were parts I liked. It was like the weaker ones, like 5 and 6, could have been fixed by the strike, if the strike hadn't been there by rewrites. So I have to do those. I'm going to follow that up with Dunk and Egg casting news. I haven't even been able to cover Dunk and Egg stuff. Thankfully, there weren't really that many filming leaks on Dunk and Egg. There's going to be 2 videos, one on all of the cast announcements they just made, and another on all the crew announcements. And then I'm going to shift into lore mode. That I've talked about this in my community tab, that tie-in lore videos for every episode. I wanted to make 2 or 3 per episode. I only really got to do it for the first 2. And I sat down and came up with like a couple of dozen ideas for like 10-minute videos, which I'll space out like 2 or 3 a week until filming starts. But I have plans. I'm not going dark during fall, despite the fact that we don't have filming news. But what you need to be doing right now is, if you actually have your own channel, make a quick video on, not based on mine, but based on those better ones. I'm going to link after this. Watch those. And then look and go, make your own on this was the studio's fault. They need 10 episodes next season. We need to spread that. And if you don't have your own channel, at least when you see other people in comment sections going, oh, I think it was the writers doing stuff, bring up on your own. Just word on the street, it was the studio messing with them. And this was, if you're trying to start a cinematic universe with more than one show in it. You're filming a second one, Dunk and Egg. You have another 2 in the pipeline, which might be greenlit, Targaryen Conquest and Nymeria. and you are cutting episodes on the thing airing now. I'm going to make other videos about my schedule and stuff and what's going on, but this is what happened. This was the fear in the back of our minds since March of 23 of why are there only 8 episodes? And then, but there's a strike coming, and they've been going, no, we'll have time for rewrites. They didn't have time for all the rewrites they wanted to do. Some of them I think they could have done easily if they pushed the premiere to fall, but they didn't want to do that because, well, we need to have the profit now. Just take the time to do it right. You know, don't just rush things out with that corporate mentality. So, we need to be pushing for criticizing what they did to the writers. We support the writers. Any flaws were due to the strike or truncating it. We need 10-episode seasons again. This is the difference between seeing Nettles and Kragan or not. This is the difference between telling the full story or not. And if we get 10-episode seasons again, if Season 3 has a 10-episode season, I honestly think we will still have the show we thought we were going to get by the end of Season 1. That the issues in Season 2, there was some slow pacing here or there, that can be absorbed. No Nettles, not that much Kragan, no Battle of the Gullet. If those come in Season 3, that can be absorbed. There is still a chance that by the end of Season 3, it'll be what we thought we'd have by the end of Season 3 when Season 1 ended. But we can't slip into inaction. We need to keep going. So please, spread the word, and to start with, watch the other videos I link at the end of this that explain this more succinctly.